Welcome, everyone, to this week's Menlo Midweek podcast. This is the Markcast this week.
That's right, Mark and Mark.
Yep, because we got Mark Swarner here, campus pastor at Menlo Park. Me, Mark Morinishi, creative person here at Menlo Church. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And this past weekend, in case you missed it, was a campus pastor teaching weekend, which is always so fun when I see that on the calendar. We're planning things out. That means that each campus gets live teaching from someone from their campus. And so, Mark Swarner, you were the one to share all your wonderful thoughts with us over this past weekend.
They'll be thoughts. We'll see how wonderful they are. Yeah.
Exactly. But as I was thinking, Mark, if for those that might not know you and not know the long history that you've had here at Menlo, let's run people through how you got to Menlo at first, and then how in Menlo you got from where you started to what you're doing now.
Got it. Yeah, it all started when I was born, back in
Yeah, there you
my
go.
my life history.
Oh, snooze.
I have
I'm
been
just
to.
kidding.
I've been here for more than 18 years now.
Yeah.
This summer, which is kind of crazy
That is kind of crazy.
when you think about it.
8 felt right, but 18 is like, oh, yeah, okay.
18 feels like a lot of life, a lot of adult
Yeah.
life. And, I'd worked at a church in the Midwest for 7 years and then San Diego for just a little under 5 years.
I didn't know you were down in San Diego, too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
and
okay.
then up here in 2007.
All right.
And started out really in a central mission outreach role just before we went multi-site at all. So we were still one church in
Okay.
Menlo Park,
Yep.
but we were ready to launch just within a few months, San Mateo and
Yeah.
Mountain View congregation. So just the early learning of how do we do this multi-site thing? What is it? What does it look like? Why are we doing it? How can we do it better? There's just been a lot of changes. So I was in that role for 9 years, resourcing all of our campuses, and then I went to Mountain View to lead that campus as the campus pastor for 5 years, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of growth, just a lot of wonderful people. Shout out to Mountain View campus there. And
Were you on the team that launched that campus?
no, Scott
okay.
Palmbush was.
Yeah.
And he and I started within a month of each other. I had a month seniority on him, and now I'm here longer than he is. So, but he had launched that. So I had stepped in when he was going to launch Saratoga.
Got it.
I jumped over to Mountain View.
Yeah.
And I'd even done an interim stint in San Mateo when we were looking for a
really?
campus
Oh,
pastor
okay.
for a
I didn't
while
know
before that.
Yeah.
But then I went to Menlo Park. It was after the pandemic hit, and there was just a lot of change, a lot of upheaval all over the world and in the church world and in Menlo, and kind of coming back to a campus where I had started, where my office used to be.
Crazy.
And
Came full circle.
It was really full circle, but I love where I am now and the team I get to work with and the people in the congregation and just seeing what God's done over all these years.
Wow. How many times have you taught on a Sunday here at Menlo? Because I was thinking back, and I think this is one of the first times I've heard you deliver a message, despite you sitting as a campus pastor in different seats all around Menlo. Did you get to teach a lot before this?
Not a lot.
Okay.
I don't know if many people got to teach a lot outside of
true.
the lead pastor.
Yep,
but,
that's true. That's true.
I mean, a number of times.
Okay.
I mean, even back in 15, 16,
Yeah.
17, 18 years ago. I mean, it might have been once.
Oh, fun.
Once a year, I would have a chance
Okay.
to.
I got to dig
give
through
a
our
sermon.
archives to
So
the young
there-
Mark Swarner message.
That's right. Back when I had my memory, and it was so not a lot. I mean, once maybe twice a year, is the normal rhythm, which makes it harder because there is a muscle that you develop in a routine in your weekly schedule, and when that's not there, you're kind of like, oh, I haven't used that teaching preaching muscle as much in a while. So.
Yeah. Well, one thing I really appreciated about your message from this past weekend was I noticed, despite you not having that muscle being used frequently, it felt like I was just having a normal conversation with you.
Huh.
Like it was your voice. You didn't have a preaching voice that you used or anything else like that, but it was more so like, oh, I'm just like in a step up from a Bible study that Mark Swarner's leading with me. And he's just, explaining this part of the gospel and telling it what it means. And it was like very comforting. And it put me in like I just feel like I'm chatting with Mark right now. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad it landed that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while. I mean, it helps that almost every week I'm up front.
That's true too.
In front of the congregation, even for our online viewers, speaking, to everybody on the other side of the camera, that I'm comfortable in that space, which helps.
Definitely.
It's just a longer period of time. And sometimes I feel like, I don't want to listen to myself for 30 minutes talk. Like that's just, but God works,
Absolutely. That's why I ask the questions on this podcast and I try not to answer them. So
right.
I'll ask you a question, Mark Swarner. For those that might have missed it from this past weekend, let's go ahead and dive into your message. Where were we? What scripture were we looking at? And what were we trying to teach as a part of this Art of Showing Up series?
Okay, let me see if I can remember way back. It's from Luke chapter 10, and it's the story of the Good Samaritan, which, again, is a very familiar story. And as I mentioned in the sermon here, and every campus pastor, by the way, was preaching on the same passage. I want to say that.
That's a good call out.
Jennifer and Josh and Troy, we all met in a room. We pored over that passage. We thought, what are some of the main points? What are some of the takeaways? We all want to have the same basic outline, but then we're each giving it our own voice and addressing it to the room that we're in. So, they're not all identical, but we're on the same page. But the parable of the Good Samaritan is this amazing interaction of Jesus with a teacher of the law, the Jewish law, who, comes up with what seems like an innocent question: "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And they get into this really fascinating exchange, and Jesus has a story within that biblical story that, whether it was something that actually happened or something that Jesus just made up in the moment, but it just points us to a lot of truths about what does God's kingdom look like? What is it like to be a neighbor? Who does God love? Who are we to love? There's a lot there in that one story.
There is. How is it for you? I'm sure that this is a story that wasn't new to you. It's pretty popular story. You've probably read over this 100, maybe 1,000 times by now. How is it honing in on this part of the story, and what parts were you like, I wish I could include that, but I just can't?
Yeah, there's always all the things that hit the cutting room floor where it's like, oh, that's a great point or illustration, or I could dive deeper there.
Right.
And then no one really wants to hear me for an hour talking about it. So the hard thing as a communicator with a story that is ostensibly familiar to a lot of people is that a lot of people who are listening to it might be familiar with it to one extent or another, and I'll feel like, well, a lot of people have talked about this passage, and how do you get at what is the core, the truth, what God has to say to us today, even though parts of it may seem very familiar. I'm not in the same place as I was a week ago or a year ago or 5 years ago. How God might speak to me today through that passage of Scripture might be different from the last time I heard a sermon on it, whether it was last week or a decade ago. Yeah. And I think cultivating that attitude going into it of God's word is always fresh and alive, and there's always something new in it. Yeah. I think the piece for me, one that was kind of fun to play with, was the part about how really it's not just a moral lesson to love people more. I mean, yes, that is there, it's true. Right. But there's so much of what the core of the gospel is, that, God has rescued us and extravagantly, healed us and paid for us to be made whole and is a part of us. And that's the core of this. It is not, it's not, as the lawyer thought, trying to earn God's love by loving enough people the right way. Right. It's a response to what God has done. But to your question about what got left out, there's so much in that story because it is a radical countercultural
Very much so.
love, and it's specifically pointed to the people that are hard to love, that we don't like, that don't like us.
Yeah, I love the Stanford and Cowell analogy that you
I
threw
know.
in there.
Got a lot of strong emotions in the room in that moment. But I have to love that team, the people who support that team too. Yeah. And especially on Palm Bush's last weekend as a Stanford graduate, and as for me as a parent of a Cal student, I just love to rub it in a little bit. Yeah, of course. But the part that I couldn't get into is, yes, we're called to love extravagantly, be interruptible, notice the people that need our help. Yeah. And there's a very real tension of like, I can't help everybody all the time. And even Jesus didn't. Even Jesus, there were people who came to him, there were crowds pressing against him, and he would go up to the mountainside and pray. Yeah. There were some needs that he left unmet, which is kind of crazy, but he was also a human at that moment. He couldn't heal everybody everywhere all the time, as a single, in the flesh. And so I think there is some discernment there of what does it mean to step outside of my comfort zone, be aware of others, treat others with humanity and grace as people loved by God,
Yeah.
but also be able to discern, what am I called to respond? How am I called to respond?
Yeah.
Does that mean I pick up every single unhoused person I see on the street and take them to a hotel?
Mm-hmm.
No, we can't, and it might not be helpful at all.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get into that whole rabbit trail. There's a much deeper questions there of when helping hurts,
Yep.
how to help well. But it's really more an issue for me of the heart. Where is my heart? Do I look at that person as an other that somehow is less deserving than I am?
Yeah.
And that to me is the deeper key.
Definitely.
Yeah.
For someone that's hearing this and wants to live this out, is this graduate level Christianity where now that I've got my stuff all sorted and I'm good, then I can start looking outside of myself? Or is this this is a calling for all of us, and we might all be on a different spectrum on where we are with faith and with God?
Right.
Is this for some people that are capable of this, or is this for everyone who identifies as a Christian?
Well, that's a great question, because in one sense, on our own strength, none of us are capable of it. Like, I can't love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. I'll fail at that all the time. And again, Lord willing, like, I'm growing in that direction. I'm becoming the kind of person who more and more and more is able to love that way.
Yep.
And one day will perfectly, but we're all kind of learning how to grow in that because we're human beings. We mess up. But I think there is room for everybody in this. I mean, this story is, who are the people that I disregard, the people I think maybe are unworthy, the people that I don't like or that don't like me, and what does it mean to be a neighbor to them, even if it's hard? And I think that is one of the distinctives today in this world where we're so divided on so many levels, and there is so much of a split of us and them, in, out, good, bad, that if the body of Christ is able to somehow not give up our principles and our beliefs, but be able to say, hey, we have to be able to love each other and show grace to each other, have civility with each other, because if God didn't do that for us, where would we be?
Yeah.
And we have to love that person as ourselves, even if we don't agree with them. And I think there is something in our society that every follower of Christ is called to learn to live into it. Again, we'll all grow over time.
Yep.
But it's not something we wait for till I've reached the 97th level of Christian discipleship, whatever that might be, to be able to learn, how do I love my neighbor better?
Right. And as we're focusing on presence and what it means to show up, whether that's at work or in your home and inviting people in for a meal, or maybe at school or wherever you are, how important is presence when it comes to being aware of who needs help and how I can help someone?
That's a fascinating question, and it begs the question of what does it mean to be present? There's physical presence, mentally, emotionally. We could be sitting here talking, and my mind is like, oh, I forgot to go pick up this at Target, and
or your son could ask you, hey, Dad, what did I just say?
Exactly. My son is talking to me, and I'm looking at my phone, and my phone really does no emotions as to whether I'm listening to it or not, but my son does. The people around me do. Yeah. So I know I missed the whole question because let's talk about listening and being present. What were we talking about?
Power of presence.
The power of presence.
Yep. And how we can, how does being present allow us to carry God's presence with us into spaces where we're supposed to care for people? Yeah,
I think the discernment that comes when we are present. Otherwise, I don't notice. We'll talk about distracted driving.
Yeah,
it could be because you're under the influence, but most likely these days you're looking at your phone.
Sure.
There's a reason why teens, when they first get their driver's license, aren't allowed to drive other teens yet.
Yeah.
Because
I remember hating that rule.
Yeah, it's like, that's a dumb rule. A boring person came up with that, because they'll get distracted with the people in the car with them and stop paying attention to the car, what's going on around them. Yep. And I think presence is an art. It's hard of not only being there, but noticing, noticing body language, tone, cues. What's somebody not saying in addition to what they are saying? Yeah. Even, someone who is let's say someone who's unhoused, who's by the sidewalk, my instinct is to just not even acknowledge. I don't want to make eye contact because they're going to ask me for money or help.
Sure.
But I've heard from people who have been homeless that they say one of the hardest things is everyone acts like they don't even exist. And so, like, okay, maybe it's not a good idea to give them money in that moment, but can we smile and say, you know, hi, how are you? Good, you know. So can we at least acknowledge with a smile and a nod?
Yeah.
And acknowledge that there's a person here, and we don't have to. If that's all, I mean, that's more than a lot of what they might experience. And I think it's that kind of presence, awareness, and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
One thing, too, that I found fascinating about your message was how you also kind of shifted it for me to take on the perspective of the person that needed help.
Right.
And so, as, you know, I can always see myself as the hero helper that has the stuff together, and I'm the one that actually will do the helping. But in reality, I'm probably most of the time the one that needs help. And so I think it's really interesting that as we're practicing presence, it might not look like the people that are needing the most help that actually are the ones that God placed in our lives to be an example of love and grace and hope towards. And so, Mark, in moments where you are meeting with, you know, friends or family or neighbors, what practices for presence have helped you kind of lean in a little bit more to say, oh, this person actually might need some help or some advice, or I could bring them a meal, or maybe I should buy them a coffee or something like that?
Yeah, that's it. I think that point of being aware that just because someone looks like they don't need help doesn't mean they don't.
Yeah.
There is an epidemic around us of, you know, all of us have, you know, needs, concerns, burdens we're carrying, and how do we, if part of the gospel of within Christians, like we are to bear one another's burdens. Well, we all have them, and we can all help in those ways.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit I'm pretty lousy at this. I'd say my wife is much better. There are other people that will really tune in and be like, "Did you notice that?" But I think curiosity is a big part of it. If I were to say one practice, it is to be curious. Don't assume that if someone looks like everything is great, don't be obnoxious and pushy or. But to be able to just be curious, like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? How was that? How'd that go with your, you know, meeting with your boss the other day that you were stressed out about? Tell me a little bit more. I mean, that kind of a curiosity will allow people to talk, and they'll identify to the extent that they are comfortable with what's going on. But if we're not curious, then we might miss a lot. Yeah,
I think that's good. And working it might be helpful too to have a couple questions that's in your line of, hey, I have a relationship with this person, but I want to get to know them a little bit more. Maybe that is what's your family like? Where'd you grow up, and what was it like growing up there?
Yes.
Like, those open doors to deeper parts of conversation where people are probably excited to share about because everyone loves to talk about their own story for the most part. But it allows your presence and curiosity to get to places that it's more than, hey, how was your weekend? Was it, a good weekend? Cool. What are you working on this week at work?
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And there are some questions like that that are so, non-threatening. You can start with it. Hey, where'd you grow up?
Yep.
You know, did you do any sports when you were a kid? I mean, tell me about your family. I mean, there are simple things. I'll give you an example of a month or two ago. I was in a meeting with a group of our church leaders, some of our elders, and it was a working business meeting. And we started with a dinner, and I asked the question. I'm just curious, where were all of you born?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And they went around, and everyone kind of shared where they were from and a little bit about their childhood. And they'd been working together for a couple of years and had never asked that question.
Yeah.
So it was great that we learned something more about each other and a little bit about what makes us tick and our background. So I think some questions like that are great.
Yeah. I like to ask the question of, if my neighbor was hearing this, or if they had questions about this, how could we explain this radical hospitality or radical curiosity or radical grace towards someone? But I kind of want to just lean into that initial question and say, are you talking with your neighbors?
Right.
Because so much of this message is about noticing the people that are around you that often go unnoticed.
Right.
So can you name your neighbors?
Yeah, that's like we got to start with the
Yeah.
basics, right? Who is my neighbor?
Who is my neighbor?
Well, literally.
Yeah.
Who is my neighbor? Do we know who they are? I was reminded there was someone in our congregation. We had a small group conversation maybe 6 months ago around those about being an unhurried friend.
Yeah.
Like, do we know our neighbors and do we know them? And this person said she'd had the thought many times of having not a block party, but a neighborhood potluck.
Yeah.
And what if we invited some of our neighbors to
Right.
hang out in the backyard just to get to know each
fun.
other?
Uh-huh.
And she'd never done it over several years and talked with her husband, and they decided, well, let's just give it a shot.
Yeah.
And went around and left little notes and knocked on doors. And
Fun.
a lot of their neighbors showed up. And she said the difference that for the following weeks, when they're getting their mail or see each other on the curb, they are stopping, they're talking, they're saying hi, they know something about each other. And for years, they literally, no one knew each other's neighbors.
Wow.
But they lived on the same
That's a
block in
great
Menlo
idea.
Park. So I
Yeah.
think there's like great opportunities to simply create those opportunities.
The extrovert
Yeah, it's the extrovert. The extrovert.
listeners are like, oh, this is I'm going to plan my donut hangout this Saturday morning on my driveway.
and the introverts
and invite
are like,
anyone that's driving by.
Please don't invade my space.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
It's learning how to do that within who we are.
For
Right?
sure, of course.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I'm just really appreciative of the care and the thought that you put into this message, as well as how you were talking to like us specifically at the Menlo Park campus to charge our neighborhood or us as neighbors to carry out this. And you said, like, you asked the question of what would it look like to change the paradigm of what it means for Christians to represent this well in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I think that if we all are a little bit more curious, we all kind of lead into what it means to be a good neighbor, what it means to seek to see if someone has help and offer, help with whatever that looks like to you. I think that's a great first step. So really appreciative of that. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about something that we mentioned in VisionCast this past week, which is Alpha. That's going to be kicking off on September 9th. And for many people, that's their first introduction to, a Christian way of thinking. And so who is Alpha for, Mark? And how can we encourage our community to really rally behind this?
Alpha is a fascinating program that's been going on for a number of years in different churches, but it is really designed for the people who have tough questions about faith or any questions about faith. Alpha is not for hey, I've been going to church and I'm a follower of Jesus and I want to walk through some of the essentials of the faith. That's not what it is. It really is a space to come, wonder, ask the questions, have some questions. What do you think life is all about? What do you think the real problem is with the world today? I mean, what are some of the answers? And wrestle honestly, and there's room in Alpha not to be pressured to believe. We will talk about, these are the fundamentals of what we believe Jesus taught in the Christian faith, but there's no pressure to adopt those. There's simply a space to say, this is what Jesus taught, but let's wrestle with those questions. So I think if you're skeptical, Alpha is great. If you have questions about what is the Christian faith about, what is life all about, Alpha's great for that. If you are very new as a believer and you're just trying to understand, it actually is great for that too.
For sure.
So Alpha is it's a wonderful opportunity for people to have civil, good, positive dialogue around some of the questions that we all ask.
Definitely.
Sometimes it's like late at night. Sometimes it's what we wonder about at 2:30 in the morning when we wake up, and wonder what life is all about, and is there hope for the world, and all that. Those are the kinds of things you can start to talk about at Alpha, and discern for yourself. I mean, everybody deserves to have an informed chance to respond. To those questions.
And I will say, the curriculum that Alpha goes through, super intentional, and it's really great how that night is structured, and it's really geared towards the person that is curious about faith, has doubts, has questions. But I would say it is for everyone in the sense that it's a perfect invite for the person that you've been wanting to invite to church for a while.
Yes.
That might be there might be some hesitations around coming to a physical church location. They might be skeptical about, okay, if I come to this place, what's that going to mean for me? We like to say it's neutral ground. It's at Los Altos Community Center.
Yes.
And it's really for everyone to be thinking about, hey, who do I have in my life that I might want to invite with me to sit at this dinner and share this meal and talk about the gospel.
Yes, that's a great corrective there to what I was saying, because it is that if you know somebody, maybe it's not you, but we all probably know someone.
Yeah.
To have that neutral space. And there's so much baggage around, church and the church building and what it means and what I'm supposed to do and when am I standing up and sitting down and, all that stuff. This is a space where you can focus on life, purpose, spirituality, faith.
Exactly.
Without all the extra stuff kind of layered in. And so it's great to invite somebody too, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure.
And so we'd love if you are thinking of and going through and trying to live out what it means to show up well this week. If you meet someone and they're curious about faith, Alpha would be a great next step for them. And that invite can look like, hey, there's this thing that's going on that my church is putting on at the community center. I'd love for you to share a meal with me and chat about this.
Yeah. That's a great thing to do. I hope everybody keeps that in mind. And one comment, too, I want to make, jumping back a little bit, when we talk about learning how to be a great neighbor, a loving neighbor, a compassionate neighbor. It really, the danger there is where it becomes something that we're just trying harder to be a better person. And honestly, like, we can't do that on our own. We have, this goes back to kind of Alpha. We have to get back to where is the source of that love? Where is the power to love like that? To be present with another person means I have to learn to be present with God first. And be present in God's love for me, and to really begin to steep in that. And out of that love, being present with God, I then learn to be present with and for others. And I will encounter God's presence as I do so. But I think we've got to start with that. It's not just try harder to be a good neighbor. It's be present with God first, and be present then with those around us.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark Swarner.
You bet.
Really
Mark Morinishi.
appreciate it.
This is Mark and Mark.
This was the Mark and Markcast. If you need any prayer encouragement this week, you reach out to our team at 650-600-0402. We'll see you at Alpha. We'll see you at Menlo next. That's coming up as well. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.